Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I also believe that the people who know him best on this subject should be trusted.
When Kamala Harris answered in an interview that she believes Trump is a fascist, the response of many, particularly on the right, was to roll their eyes. After all, there have been no militaristic rallies, no invasions of neighboring countries, no death camps. The question asked of Harris was in response to comments by two of Trump's cabinet members. The first was by his chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, who was quoted in Bob Woodward's book War. "He is the most dangerous person ever. I had suspicion when I talked to you about his mental decline and so forth, but now I realize he's a total fascist. He is now the most dangerous person to this country, a fascist to the core." The second was from a New York Times interview by Trump's own Chief of Staff, John Kelly. In that role, for 2 years he worked more closely with Donald Trump than any other official.
What do you think? Do you think he's a fascist?
Well, I'm looking at the definition of fascism. It's a far-right, authoritarian, ultranationalist political ideology and movement characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy. So certainly, in my experience, those are the kind of things that he thinks would work better in terms of running America.
Now, when we look at the components of Kelly's definition of fascism, 3 on the list could be grouped under the general category of an authoritarian government. You can have authoritarians on the right or the left. The ideology is not important. Only the brutal suppression of opposing voices and the removal of all checks on total power by controlling the courts, the legislature, and the career civil service. Trump has frequently expressed admiration for the total control that dictators and authoritarians hold in the countries they rule.
They're all top of the line. Our guy's not top of the line, never was. These are top of the line people at the top of their game. President Xi is a brilliant man. If you went all over Hollywood to look for somebody to play the role of President Xi, you couldn't find it. There's nobody like that. The look, the brain, the whole thing. We had a great relationship. We got along so well. There was a great chemistry we had. Great. We talked about everything. A great chemistry. But people ask me, how smart is she? I said, top of the line. You never met anybody smarter. How smart is Kim Jong-un? Top of the line. You know, people say, oh, this and that. Really smart. You know, when you come out and as a young man at 24, 23, even though he sort of inherits it, most people, when they inherit, they lose it. And that's easy stuff. He took over a country of very smart people, very, very energetic people, very tough people, at a very young age, and he has total dominant control. That's not easy. These are very smart. Putin, very smart. Elon, I know every one of them, and I know them well. I know Putin, I know President Xi, I know Kim Jong-un of North Korea. I know every one of them. And let me tell you, people will say, oh, this is terrible. He said, I'm not saying anything good or bad. They're at the top of their game. They're tough, they're smart, they're vicious, and they're going to protect their country, whether they love their country. They probably do. It's just a different form of love, but they're going to protect their country. But these are tough people at the top of their game.
I went in yesterday and there was a television screen, and I said, this is genius. Putin declares a big portion of the Ukraine. Putin declares it as independent. Oh, that's wonderful. I said, how smart is that? And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. That's the strongest peace force. We could use that on our southern border. That's the strongest peace force I've ever seen. Here's a guy who's very savvy. I know him very well.
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect him.
Do you? Why?
Well, I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with him. He's a leader of his country. I say it's better to get along with Russia than not. Will I get along with him? I have no idea.
He's a killer, though. Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent?
Trump's attitude toward ruthless leaders who have taken away freedom of the press, attacked religious minorities, and murdered political rivals is amoral. He sees viciousness as strength, control as protection, love of power as love for the country. General Mark Milley, in his retirement address, referred to Trump as a wannabe dictator.
We don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Especially in the first 3 years of his time in office, he did not yet know where the levers of power were for full control, but he made a point to attack the free press.
In the media, because the media, those people right there, they're corrupt, largely corrupt. They are truly the enemy of the people. They are. They used to be.
The tradition of American political rhetoric has generally been to emphasize what we as a society can achieve if we work together.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Any clip from most American presidents of the past is filled with the pronouns we, us, our.
We've promised the world a season of truth, the truth of our great civilized ideas, individual liberty, representative government, the rule of law under God. We've never needed walls or minefields or barbed wire to keep our people in, nor do we declare martial law to keep our people from voting for the kind of government they want. Yes, we have our problems. Yes, we're in a time of recession. And it's true there's no quick fix, as I said, to instantly end the tragic pain of unemployment. But we will end it.
In contrast, many dictators try to build a cult of personality where people see the leader and the state as one. Everything good that comes from the state is coming from the leader. Similarly, Trump's rhetoric has always emphasized him as the one who can save the country. His speeches are filled with the pronouns I, me, my.
And nobody knows this stuff better than me. Nobody knows more about taxes than I do, and income than I do. Nobody knows more about construction than I do.
Nobody knows more about campaign finance than I do.
Nobody knows consultants better than me. I know more about drones than anybody. Nobody knows much more about technology, this type of technology, certainly, than I do. Nobody knows more about technology than me. I know more about technology than anybody. Nobody in the history of this country has ever known so much about infrastructure as Donald Trump. I know the H-1B. I know the H-2B. Nobody knows it better than me. I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me. Nobody understands the press, but I think I understand them as well as anybody. I mean, I know these people much better than you do. I understand things. I comprehend very well.
Trump has not typically been unusually militaristic against foreign powers, but in the last year of his first administration, threats of using military force against protesters emerged. Now in the current campaign, threats of using military against his own critics have become shockingly common.
It's the enemy from within, all the scum that we have to deal with that hate our country. That's a bigger enemy than China and Russia. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
According to Kelly's definition of fascism, it is not enough to be authoritarian, but you need to be far right and wish to impose a social hierarchy, targeting your rhetoric against specific groups that the majority population can focus their blame on. Trump has not targeted his propaganda against Jews as was done by the Nazi regime, but rather against immigrants of all kinds.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
At his original campaign announcement, he focused on illegal immigrants coming from Mexico. The fact is, both Republican and Democratic administrations try to stop illegal entries at our border, so Trump was not likely to be immediately effective at doing so. So in practice, he turned his attention towards stopping certain forms of legal immigration, which a president has much more control over.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out What the hell is going on?
Early in his first administration, he focused on Muslims and refugees. Soon after he took office, he put in place the promised Muslim and refugee ban, blocking arrivals of refugees or any visitors from a list of Muslim countries. From personal experience, I saw how refugee resettlement agencies all but shut down. Staff were laid off, and refugee arrivals slowed to a trickle. In the current election, Trump has promised to reinstate the Muslim and the refugee ban, making them even stronger.
I will ban refugee resettlement from terror-infested areas like the Gaza Strip, and we will seal our border and bring back the travel ban. Remember the famous travel ban? We didn't take people from certain areas of the world because I didn't want to have people ripping down and burning our shopping centers and killing people. But we're not taking them from infested countries.
In his first administration, it was seen that Trump's rhetoric against immigrants and other minorities gave a boost to hate groups. Early on, there was the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, which escalated to an attack by a right-wing protester who drove his car into a group of counter-protesters, killing one. Trump was criticized for being slow to make a statement about the protest and attack, and when he did, for refusing to take a stand against hate.
In that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue.
While it is not fair to blame a political leader for the most outrageous acts by his supporters, there was a rise in mass killings by far-right members during the Trump administration. Yet Trump directed fewer FBI resources towards right-wing extremism. In a 2020 debate, Trump was challenged and asked to speak against hate groups such as the Proud Boys.
Groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
willing to do
specifically
that,
do it? Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
right. Who would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
That phrase, stand back and stand by, became a slogan for the group, who printed it on T-shirts. The group took a leading role in the January 6th attack on Congress. One propaganda tactic used by the Nazis was to widely speak in the media about any criminal act done by individual Jews in society. Today, this tactic is used by Trump and in the right-wing media when they highlight and repeatedly mention again and again every violent crime committed by an unauthorized immigrant. Now, obviously, any murder is tragic and newsworthy. But sadly, in a society of 335 million people, there are violent acts done by at least some individuals from any subset of the population. If you just search the news for murders and other crimes committed by Methodist ministers and highlighted them in public time and again, soon you would have the public asking, "What the hell is going on with Methodist ministers?" In reality, Methodist ministers and immigrants in general, including undocumented immigrants, have lower rates of violent crime than U.S.-born citizens. But the act of repeating these isolated incidents has many in the public believing that unauthorized immigrants are highly likely to engage in criminality. In the current campaign, Trump is really leaning into this strategy. It is noted that during the 2 years when the COVID pandemic was strongest, the stress caused by fear, loss of family members, and social isolation led to an increase in all kinds of crime. In 2020, Trump's last year in office, before Biden was president, there was a huge increase. Biden took office when the COVID pandemic was at its peak, and thus the murder rate continued to increase, though not as sharply as in 2020. However, as things slowly returned to normal, schools were reopened and social norms reasserted themselves, the murder rate has dropped steadily since then. Yet if one listens to the Trump campaign rhetoric, that bump in crime is totally due to illegal immigrants flooding across the border, practically invited by the Biden and Harris administration. And the rhetoric has gotten darker than ever before.
Any leader in American history has ever inflicted upon our people. She has violated her oath, eradicated our sovereign border, and unleashed an army of migrant gangs who are waging a campaign of violence and terror against our citizens. There has never been anything like it anywhere in the world for any country. Kamala has imported criminal migrants from prisons and jails, insane asylums and mental institutions from all around the world, from Venezuela to the Congo. A lot of people are coming from the Congo prisons. They're coming from all over the world.
There are a significant number of citizens who are themselves immigrants who plan to vote for Donald Trump. They may say, he's not talking about me when he says those things. He's talking about criminal gangs. I don't want criminal gangs in my community either. But they need to be aware this is pure fantasy Trump is weaving. He is trying to make Americans afraid of immigrants. The president already has the power to deport undocumented immigrants, and he has the power to deport permanent residents who commit a crime. But he promises to use these claims of invasion to trigger the Enemy Aliens Act of 1798, which would allow him to deport legal immigrants purely on the basis of which country they come from. If you think that he only cares about legal immigrants, note that at his Madison Square Garden rally, a comedian they invited to speak made disparaging remarks against Puerto Ricans, all of whom are U.S. citizens, not immigrants at all.
There's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico.
These racist comments harken back to another rally at Madison Square Garden 85 years ago, when a group of Nazis used supposed claims of patriotism to spout their hateful rhetoric. Let us not allow this type to gain power today.
To the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice